and welcome to the Dear Dyslexic podcast series. I'm your host, Shae. Have you ever heard of a dyslexic tutor? Well, today's guest is just that. She works at the Working Men's College and the Central Royal School of Speech and Drama, both in London. At the age of 40, she was the first in her family to go to university and to get a degree. Today, I would like to welcome a great supporter and mentor of mine all the way from England, Cheri Shone. Thank you, Cheri, for coming on the show today.
It's a pleasure.
Can you talk to us, tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up for you and when you were diagnosed with dyslexia?
Well, sort of from quite early in school, I started having problems. But at that stage, I'm in my 50s now, so the the system didn't actually know what was going on. So I had all sorts of tests and things. They were giving me EEGs, eye tests. They put me on Ritalin at one stage.
Wow.
You know, yeah, trying to deal with it. And I think it was identified as dyslexia sort of around about 11, 12. With my mother heard something on the radio, and there was this woman who was talking about dyslexia. It's sort of just emerging at that point. I grew up in South Africa, so I didn't have an official diagnosis until 2002, I think it was, when I started my degree. But I knew all along that.
So what was school like for you growing up then?
Horrendous. It was just a complete nightmare. I was sick all the time. I had my tonsils out because I was sick all the time. Um, Huge amounts of, it's a very, very common story. With dyslexic people, you're under constant sort of stress and attack because you're trying your best, but you don't understand why you have this inability to do what they want you to do. And the big thing about dyslexia is that it's not a constant thing, so it changes from day to day. So something that you could do one day, you completely unable to do the following day. And I think if teachers don't have an understanding of what's going on, they think you're just trying to be difficult. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think what happens to a lot of dyslexic students or dyslexic people is they end up with post-traumatic stress disorder. Because it's sort of a low level, constant attack, on your sense of self.
Yes, we're talking about that today actually because I have a colleague who's dyslexic and our boss had told us to toughen up about something, and we were both saying that over the years, if you develop this anxiety slash armor, that you're constantly questioning: Are you going to do it right? Are you doing a good job? Is this impacting? Can people tell that I'm not quite like other people? And because you do fluctuate, sometimes if you're tired, you're not a fast reader, or you miss things more, or anything could be happening that may impact on that day. So you're constantly in a state of worry. I guess that's how I feel.
I think you. I mean, I have a psychology degree, and one of the things they talk about is if people are constantly under attack, that you become hyper vigilant.
Mm.
So you are constantly on the lookout for, something that's going to attack you. That flight fight mechanism becomes oversensitized, I think.
Yeah, I can completely understand where you're coming from with that. And you've also, we've been lucky enough to have you write a blog piece for our Dear Dyslexic site, which I'm very appreciative
Hmm.
of. And in that, you talk about those challenges as well, but also the common labels that are associated with dyslexic people as they're growing up around the stupid and the lazy, and I guess with those
Mm,
inconsistencies, because one day you're good, one day you're not so good.
mm.
How did those labels impact on you growing up? Do you feel that they shaped you to become the person you are today?
Well, if I think if people are constantly telling you you're stupid and lazy for long enough, you start to question yourself. Um, and I think, but at the same time, you'll have an innate sense that this isn't true, because
Mm.
you're trying your best and you're working hard. So I think you end up with a complete distrust of authority because they are the people in charge, the people who are supposed to be educating you, um, are not reflective of your experience. I think what also happens is that you have a counter transference thing going on in the classroom because I think dyslexic people push um, teachers' buttons. I'm not a good teacher because they're doing, what they perceive to be their best, and you, they are not able to help you. At the same time, they know you're capable. So I think there's a lot of anxiety that builds up around that. For me, what that means is that I've had sort of an unhealthy relationship with sort of alcohol, drugs, issues with anxiety and depression. Um, but I think the other thing that it's given me is the drive to prove that I'm not stupid. So, in a way, what I've achieved all comes out of that sort of um, negative.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing that because um, on my website, I share a little bit about when I was finally diagnosed at 27 and spiraling out of control and going into this
Mm,
depression, and my world imploded on me. And a lot of
yeah.
those mechanisms relying on alcohol or having severe anxiety or drugs can really come to the forefront for people because you're trying to manage so many things. And it's so thank you for raising that because I think it's probably quite a common trait amongst lots of people. When you're in that constant anxiety and you're not feeling good about
Oh,
yourself, then you start to,
absolutely.
use crutches, whatever
And
that
they, I
may be.
mean, it creates issues like self-harm, personality disorder. I think all of those things are and in you internalize the system's inability to support you as your own failure.
Mm. Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the
And
head for a lot of people.
and I think one of the things that I tell my students all the time is that quite often our responses are a reasonable response to an unreasonable situation. You are doing your best and constantly being told that you are failing. If you don't act out, I don't think you'd be normal.
Mm. Yeah, and we were just talking about that in another interview, and the constant. We tried not to use the word fail, but you do continually feel like you're failing. And if you're
Yes,
constantly
absolutely.
hitting the ground and having to get back up and hitting the ground and having to get back up, which creates
Mm.
such a resilience in people as well that have dyslexia. But sometimes it's hard to see that light and see that you actually are resilient if you keep getting knocked down all the time or knocked back all the time.
And not recognizing the effort that you're putting in. I mean, it's almost like it's sort of education is an extreme sport.
Mm. It is. It's exhausting.
Yes, absolutely.
And in the brain, I'd be interested to see studies around fatigue and dyslexia because your brain is working so hard, and especially if like I'm in an industry where I've got to read and write all the time,
Mm.
and my brain, I can feel it exhausted. And then you've just got to cope
Absolutely.
with your day to day everything else as well as that.
Well, I mean, one of the things I think I find, if you think about the thing that is and again, this is something that I'm constantly talking about with my students. I think it's more important for dyslexic people to get that. that sort of work-life balance because we have because the our day-to-day sort of just walking around the world reading and what have you, it's more cognitively active.
Mm.
So we all get more tired than most people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you don't schedule in that downtime and the rest and all of that sort of thing, you can make yourself ill.
Mm. And yeah, there are a lot of things that we struggle with, but also things that we do extremely well. And you were the first in your family to go to university. What did that feel like for you achieving such a big thing?
Um, what did it feel like what did it feel like achieving it? I didn't know. It's the next step. I you always look you're always looking forward, aren't you? What's the
Yes.
next thing that you're going to do?
Yes.
Um, when you've done it, it feels normal.
Hmm.
That's what it feels like. But starting it felt really scary. Really scary.
So, what were some of the challenges when you started? Because, I mean, especially if you struggled so much at school, then going into any type of further education is extremely scary. So, what
Well,
were some of the strategies and challenges that you faced?
I think for a lot of dyslexic people and for myself, just getting through the door of um, an educational institution is an act of bravery. You know, because you're going back into the place where you were essentially abused.
Mm.
Um, and it was just coping with that sort of classroom environment, unpicking, sort of, what I could change, what I couldn't change, learning to schedule in downtime. Because in the first couple of years, what I used to do was go, oh, I can do an extra half an hour. And those half an hours built up to a point where I had a sort of crisis, physical health crisis. And I think that was just due to not taking enough rest and, not getting enough sleep, not taking enough downtime.
Mm.
Um, yeah, but it's the benefits of doing a degree at that point, now are huge. I mean, it's completely changed my life.
Yes, it's changed mine as well, even though I've had to do a couple to find out where I would like to end up in a career path.
Yes.
Hadn't quite got there, but I think I have now. So, who have been your biggest supporters? I'm really lucky. I've got extremely amazing family that support me and really close friends that have helped me get to where I am. So, have you had people backing you throughout your journey?
I would say everybody has been really positive. In terms of practical sort of academic support, the dyslexia support that I got at university was absolutely fundamental. Um, but I would say I did it myself. I was single, living in London, um, yeah, so I had to rely on myself. I'd done a lot of reading, which is odd. Um,
No, I'm the
I've
same.
always wanted I've always wanted a mentor, and I was thinking the other day, actually, whenever I've had a question, I've gone to books, which is really odd for a dyslexic person, but I built up a lot of resilience through that.
And it's interesting because some people I've spoken to love reading. I'm one of them. That's how I have downtime,
Mm.
which I know sounds strange as a dyslexic. And then other people are authors, but they don't read at all.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting that some of us like to read, some of us won't read at all, but they're really good writers, but my writing's terrible. So it's interesting how we have similar traits and find we're good at one thing and maybe not so good at another, whether it's reading or writing.
Well, the dyslexic spectrum is really broad, so there's not one size fits all.
No.
Although there are common trends within the dyslexic community, we are all absolutely individuals.
Mm.
A book that's really worthwhile having a look at is the Dyslexic Advantage, where they talk about different dyslexic styles.
I'll have to look that
So
one up.
I've actually sent a link through of anything that I'm going to mention.
Oh, great. And then I can post it up on the website for everyone
Yes,
to have a look at.
yes.
That would be great. Thank you. So you've gone through university and now you are a dyslexic tutor, which is something we don't have in Australia. So
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean for those of us in
What is
Australia that don't have access to one?
so it's conceptualized as um, in it as providing the student with the skills that they need in order um, to study. I think the day-to-day basics of just living and doing things, uh, sort of filling in forms and all of that, takes up so much of your cognitive effort that you don't have time to develop those study skills that you need. And so the dyslexia support is just about helping students to understand how their dyslexia impacts what they are doing on a day-to-day basis, and then how to manage it. I think one of the best things to know is, identify where you have the issue, decide which things you particularly want to change, and then focus on that because you can't do everything. For example, I've never wanted to learn to spell. It doesn't, the computer will do it for me. There's software that will do it for me. But I've always wanted to read, so I focused on that. If I wanted to learn to spell, I could learn to spell. But, it takes such a lot of effort. It's not something I want to put my time into. There are other things I want to do.
So are there certain strategies that you generally recommend to your students, or is it just a case by case type of
Well,
scenario?
I work collaboratively, can't say the word, collaboratively with my students. So it's about developing an understanding of where the blocks are and how you can create support around that. All of the strategies are actually outlined in a book called Study Skills for Students with Dyslexia.
By Sandra?
Again, yeah,
Yes,
Sandra Hargreaves and Jamie Crabb. I've sent you the link to that.
thank you.
Um, one of the biggest things is about chunking all of the activities, so breaking things down and um, getting that sort of rest and work balance, recognizing that you're not going to be able to do one day you'll be able to work. If you can't work, schedule other activities that you need to support your study. It's just about being strategic about how you work. So
And
that's what we explore.
And that's a really great resource, Sandra's book. I'm very excited to say she's one of my mentors who's been helping me.
Oh,
She's originally from Australia, and she's been kind enough to let us take some of her strategies to put up on the website, which we'll be doing soon. So it's a really
okay.
valuable resource.
Well,
And
she was actually my dyslexia tutor
oh,
at
was she?
university.
There you go. It's a small dyslexic world. But she's been great, and the book's fantastic. So I'm glad
It
you
is,
mentioned
yeah,
that,
yeah.
and the chunking as well. So, um, anything else you think that students might find of value, seeing we don't have dyslexic tutors over here? That you think in Australia?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Do you think do you have any other strategies that might be useful for us over in Australia that
Okay.
don't have dyslexic tutors support at the moment?
So, what I would say is the first thing I tell my students is understand there's nothing wrong with you. You're just wired differently. And if you're having problems it's because the system can't support you, not because you can't do it. Um, Identify the issues that you have and decide what you want to deal with. Um, YouTube will tell you how to do most things. So if you if you're looking for a quick resource on say a study skills thing, or if you want to learn how to do a maths problem or anything, segment a chicken,
Learn how to throw a
YouTube will tell
javelin.
you how to do it. um, I think also use technology. I've just discovered Google Keep, which has revolutionized my life.
Hmm.
Um, I've also sent you a link to DNA Matters,
Ah, yes.
which is um, that Jamie Crabb, who also edited the study skills book. He's a part of their executive committee, and they've got a resources section that lists all of the technological resources that dyslexic people can use. It's very comprehensive, so I recommend students go onto that, or people go onto that to have a look.
Great, I'll put that up on the website. Thank you. What about day to day for yourself in your workplace? Are there any strategies that you use, or is it open disclosure over there? Over here, people don't tend to talk about the fact that they're dyslexic due to discrimination and workplace issues, which we're trying to change through the Dear Dyslexic Foundation. So in the UK, all the research I've done seems that it's quite friendly and that you can disclose it and there doesn't seem to be any issues. Is that right?
Um, in an ideal world, it would be like that. It's not always like that. I think it's becoming more acceptable to talk about it. People are starting to talk about it over here. Um, I think it's like any difference, whether it's being gay or anything. If people don't understand it, there's prejudice.
Mm.
So I think you have to make decisions about disclosure on a case by case basis, and pick your battles, decide which ones you're going to challenge, which ones you're going to just leave. It's not worth it. Um, yeah, but it is changing. It is changing slowly. I'm very open. I'm very lucky. I work in a supportive environment. I know British Telecom is very supportive, but people still get discriminated against because of dyslexia and lack of understanding.
So, are there any take home messages for our listeners out there around workplace and some of the things that you use to help you get through?
Um, I think know yourself, and really understand that you're not you're just different. One of the things, yeah, over here, um, the I was going to say CIA, but it's not that. um, MI5 actively recruit dyslexic people because of the way they think. Silicon Valley actively recruit dyslexic people.
Mm.
There's a larger number of architects because of the way we think. Dyslexia can be a huge advantage if if you understand it.
Yeah, I think you're right. It can be a huge advantage. It's just finding your niche.
And I think it's a very useful label, but don't accept other people's interpretation of that label. You know, I think once dyslexic people start talking about their experience, it will change. I mean, if you look at the DSM-5, the diagnostic manual for, mental
Mm-hmm.
illness, dyslexia is um, labeled as a specific learning disability,
Mm.
which places it only within an academic context when you and I know it's a lived experience.
Mm.
And until dyslexic people themselves start to talk about that. And, it affects your relationships, it affects huge amounts of things. So, just because it's written down and by somebody supposedly authoritative doesn't mean it's true, you know.
Yeah, and it's right. It affects all facets of your life. And I've spoken before with other people around the hidden disability, and that because you look normal and you sound normal, that people forget that actually we do have these challenges, and that it can impact on all different aspects of our lives. But people forget
once
that.
when Once when I told somebody I was dyslexic, they told me that's I didn't look funny. Yeah,
So yeah, it is really a hidden disability, isn't it?
exactly. Exactly. And I think that makes it more difficult to deal with.
Mm.
There's research that says that mental abuse is actually it causes more damage than physical abuse.
Yeah,
And I think a lot of the dyslexic school experience is abusive.
yeah,
So,
and
but,
it shapes who you
but
are, and it shapes your brain.
absolutely, but it does, it doesn't have to be that way. And you can basically do anything you want. You've just got to decide what's important. What's important, and it's not what's important to somebody else, it's what's important to you.
Mm.
And if you use the strategies, if you use the technology, I've written a chapter for a book. I would never have imagined I could do that.
Yeah, and that's what the whole philosophy of the Dear Dyslexic Foundation is about, is that we can do whatever we want to do with the right supports and strategies in place. So,
But we dyslexic people are so creative. Once they discover the strategies, they don't need outside support. The very fact that they are functioning within society is proof of their capability.
mm,
So the support you can develop the support yourself.
yeah. Though I don't know if I'd get through without my mum, because I still ring and cry to her sometimes when I've had a bad day. Or my
That
sister.
just makes you human.
It does.
I think everybody does that. That's not dyslexic.
So, are there any things that you would like to see change in the next 5 years?
I'd like to see dyslexia identified earlier and support to start earlier. I'd like to see dyslexic people gain their own voice and own the debate around what it means to be dyslexic. And your website is absolutely, facilitating that process. So well done to you.
Well, thank you. I think that we've had so many. It seems to be parents that are driving the change because they're trying to support their children, and really the young people and the adults. We haven't had a voice, and we
Mm.
haven't been in the debate. The parents have been the ones advocating. So, through the work that we do, hopefully we start to give people that voice, and that it's okay to talk about it, and um, that we aren't discriminated against for doing that.
Well, I think there is we I think we are currently at a tipping point in the whole advocacy thing, because more and more the debate is being carried out by dyslexic people themselves.
Mm.
This is my experience. And if you go onto the internet, there is tons of stuff out there.
Well, thank you so much for a very positive and interesting podcast. I've really enjoyed speaking to you today, Cheri. So thank you so much for sharing your story
Pleasure.
and some of the differences that are happening in the UK compared to Australia and where we need to start aiming towards. And for our listeners out there, you can find out more about Cheri's story under our feature blog section on the Dear Dyslexic website. And until then, bye for now.